For those of you who are taking Thesis seminar, I wanted to create a video, kind of a subsequent video to yesterday's audio, where I explain what you can think about when developing a results and discussion section. Before I get into that, just a quick reminder, if you go into your Google Classroom site, you can access this by phone. Remember that all tutoring sessions are being recorded, so if you go to week 2, under recorded tutoring sessions, you'll see the link that should take you to the folder with the corresponding week number. We're entering week 3, so obviously this week, all tutoring sessions will be uploaded to week 13. So I highly recommend, if you need to refer back to our discussions for reference, feel free to take a look at those recordings as you've done pretty much all semester. I'll continue to do this up until probably week 15. Let's see, we're in week 13, 14. Yeah, week 15 I think will be our last week as we conclude our first draft scheduled for May 24th, 2019. And then after that, we'll be focusing mainly on your oral defense, your oral presentation. So at that point, we will no longer have tutoring sessions. It will only be sessions will only be scheduled on a case-by-case basis. If you certainly want to schedule time, if you have questions, of course, we'll schedule those, but it won't be mandatory. Also, if you go into Google Classroom, 2 assignments have been uploaded. If you go to week 14, next Friday, we have an assignment due that's basically going to cover the results and discussion section. So you'll receive a grade for having completed the results and discussion section. And then the week after that, the Friday after, May 24th, I'll be primarily focusing on your abstract, introduction, and conclusion. So you'll receive a grade for that. And again, May 24th is going to be our final due date for the entire thesis paper. So make sure that you try to get everything in by May 24th. Of course, if you have any questions and you want me to look at anything throughout your paper, continue to leave comments and questions in Google Docs as you have been doing throughout the semester. All right, so let's get into the results and discussion section. And the main point that I want to make, and I didn't really dive too deeply into this in the audio that I provided yesterday. And so I want to give you some ideas, and I want to give you basically 4 examples of different ways that you can go about organizing your ideas in the results and discussion section. For the most part, all of you are going to probably be including all of the information in one section called results and discussion section. Since all of you are doing either qualitative research or mixed methods research that is heavily focuses on qualitative information, I think for most of you, your best choice will be to include one section for the entire discussion, okay? The results and discussion section. So one way that you can go about organizing your ideas, right? You've analyzed the information, you've got your head around it, you understand which information is more important than others, and you're ready to begin answering your research questions. One way that you can go about it is simply respect the same order that you presented your research questions. So if you have, let's say, 3 research questions, you might begin with a how question, and your first section might deal with that first research question. Your second section might deal with the second research question, and so on. So if you have anywhere from 2 to 4 research questions, it might make sense to organize your sections, your subsections, within the results and discussion section by answering each of the research questions in turn. So that's one way that you can go about it. A second way that you can go about organizing your results and discussion section is by respecting the same order as you have presented your literature review. So that might be a logical way of going about organizing your answers to those research questions is by respecting the same order in which you presented your theoretical framework. A third way that you can organize your results and discussion section is many of you are doing a qualitative research or a case study, and you have participants. You specifically have teacher participants. Many of you have 2 to 3 teachers that you're focusing on, or 2 to 3 groups that you're focusing on. And so it might make sense to organize your results and discussion section by participant. So maybe your first section deals with presenting findings, presenting the results and your interpretation, your discussion, by talking about the first teacher first, right? And then the second section, you talk about the second teacher. In the third section, you talk about the third teacher, for example. This is another way, just doing it by participant. The fourth way that you can go about organizing your results and discussion section is by looking very closely at the way that you coded the information. We talked about cycling and going and moving from initial coding and basically grouping those initial codes into categories. Maybe then organize those categories into theories or approaches. And so you might go about creating sections or subsections for your discussion and results and discussion section by looking at the approaches or theories that you created in your coding process. This might make the most sense. You might then just basically include all of the keywords or labels or codes or categories that you included in each of those respective theories and bring those into the discussion as you outline or you present your findings, your results, and your discussion. Okay, so these are 4 ways that come to mind in terms of how you can go about organizing your results and discussion section. Once you have chosen the approach, the way in which the organizational pattern, I should say, that you feel is most appropriate, because there should be one approach that is the most appropriate. Now, it could differ depending on the nature of your study, and it might be different than your classmates. So it's not that one inherently is better than the other. You're going to need to figure out, what do you want to say based on your analysis, based on your research questions, even your theory? What's the easiest, most logical way to present your ideas, to present your answers to your research questions in a way that someone else can easily understand? Remember, your job here is to be understood. You've had the benefit of spending hours thinking about this topic, analyzing the information. Your job is to present your findings, and you're not going to talk about all of the information. You're going to talk about the information that's most relevant, most important, most interesting to your research questions. But you need to outline it, or you need to, present it in a way that the reader can read it one time and get the meaning, understand what you're trying to say. Okay, you don't want the reader to have to reread many times to figure out what you're trying to say. We're trying to write a coherent text, and a way to do that is to choose the most appropriate organizational pattern. So the first step is to take those 4 examples that I presented. There are certainly other examples, so it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to choose one of those 4. But I hope that by looking at those 4 examples that you're choosing, or at least recognizing, that some of those organizational patterns are going to be more appropriate than others, again, depending on the nature of your study. That's the key takeaway that I want you to leave having watched this video. This is what I want you to take away from this, is that you see which of those organizational patterns are more appropriate. And this is we're at a point now in your writing process that if you're still not sure what organizational pattern is most appropriate, we need to talk about that right away, face-to-face. And it could be during our tutoring session, or it could be one scheduled beyond our normally scheduled tutoring session. But this has to be decided on, obviously, right away, so you can begin now drafting your results and discussion section. Now, the second thing I want you to think about after you've made a decision about organizational patterns and which one is the most appropriate, then another aspect of coherency is thinking about how you're going to outline or present your results and your discussion. Remember, your results are your findings. They're the interviews that you conducted with your teachers and students. Those are the quotes that you captured from your classroom observations. It could even be answers to certain questions, open questions in your questionnaire. It could even be possibly a document, some sort of lesson plan, anything that is in written form and text form that you analyzed or you coded. All of that information, those are findings, and those are your results. Now, the discussion is going to be your interpretation on those results. What do they mean? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? How do those results compare and contrast with the literature? How do they compare and contrast with experts who talk about the same thing? This is really important when you start thinking about the meal plan. And so let me talk about the meal plan in terms of what we already know from the literature review. We already know from the literature review that the meal plan is an acronym that helps us develop solid and fully developed body paragraphs. The M stands for the main idea of the topic sentence. The E stands for evidence. A stands for analyze or analysis. L stands for linking or a summarizing sentence. So each of our body paragraphs we know from our literature review. Each of our body paragraphs needs to have a combination of those four types of sentences, and a certain order is expected. Now, in your results and discussion section, we're still going to think about the meal plan, but we're going to look at it a little bit differently in that we're going to look at some variations that are going to be possible. In fact, they're going to be needed. They're going to be required. So we're still going to expect that each of your body paragraphs in your results and discussion section is going to begin with a main idea or topic sentence. We're going to also expect that the very last sentence of each of your body paragraphs in your results and discussion section is going to be either a linking sentence or a summarizing sentence. Now, what could differ, in fact, there are some differences here when we talk about the evidence types of sentences and the analysis sentences. Now, in your results and discussion section, the evidence sentences are going to be different than what you were thinking about and developing in your literature review. In your literature review, the evidence came from outside sources, so we needed a citation. Now, in the results and discussion section, the evidence is going to be your results. They're going to be your findings. Those direct quotes, again, any data information that comes from questionnaires or focus groups, that information now is going to serve as evidence in your body paragraphs in your results and discussion section. Now, you may be asking, well, if it's evidence, does that mean that I need a citation? And probably the only reason I would include a citation would be perhaps for any direct quotes that you conduct from an interview or a focus group. And if you are including those, which probably all of you are going to be to a certain degree, I would include a citation called personal communication. Personal communication. So this citation is going to go after the quote, after the direct quote. All right, so you're going to use quotation marks, and then you're going to end the quotation with a citation in parentheses, personal communication. Personal communication does not include anything in your references. Okay, so it's just going to be a citation, and that's it. All right, so that's going to be your first difference, a different way of looking at the meal plan when comparing this to what you did in the literature review. Now, the analysis sentences are really going to be your discussion. So your analysis is going to be synonymous with discussion. Evidence is synonymous now with results. All right, so you're going to now have evidence sentences and where you're going to present your results, and you're going to have analysis sentences that you're going to bring in your own interpretation, your own discussion. All right, you're still going to be explaining, you could be comparing and contrasting. It's really the same idea as what you did in your literature review, in the sense that analysis sentences, again, they explain, comment, think of it as commenting. You're comparing and contrasting. You're making some sort of judgment. And another difference here is that your analysis sentences also are going to be, along with your own interpretation, are going to be where you can include citations from outside sources. So you're going to need to provide support for the opinions that you are forming. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have a citation for every point that you make. I think that we can have too many citations if basically your whole analysis are citations. I would rather you think critically about your evidence in terms of the topic sentences for each of your body paragraphs and see how you explain and comment on that yourself, and then occasionally include citations from outside sources, outside references that, of course, come also from your theoretical framework. Okay, so this is where you align your answers and your analysis of your findings with the literature. So I would suggest not including any citations in your discussion that you don't mention already, that you don't present in some way in your theoretical framework, in your literature review. So I would try to keep that in mind as well. All right, so we have evidence sentences, we have analyze sentences or analysis sentences. We know that evidence sentences also means results, and we know that analysis sentences mean discussion. So the final thing I want to say about how you can think about creating really good body paragraphs is you're going to have to make a decision about how you're going to present your findings paragraph as you move from paragraph to paragraph. So the first example I want to share with you is taking one paragraph and including both your evidence and your analysis sentences in the same paragraph. Or in other words, creating a body paragraph where you're going to include both the results and your discussion. There are going to be times where this might be the best choice, where you really need that explanation along with the evidence right away, that you don't want to present too much evidence because maybe it's going to be confusing, maybe this links to some other point, so you need to present both of those within one paragraph. So when you present your one body paragraph, after you present the topic sentence or the main idea, then you'll need to begin with the evidence, or you need to begin with the results. My suggestion, because sometimes if you look at some example, other student work, or perhaps even other applications, you might see where they do the analysis first and they present the results. My suggestion to all of you, without exception, is that I would present the results first, present the answers, present the findings, the citations, triangulate the information, bringing in different sources to complement, to provide perspective, present the findings, and then present your analysis, your own discussion, your own interpretation. So in your body paragraph, you're going to have maybe 1, 2, 3 sentences that you present your findings, and you're going to present a discussion. And just what you did when you developed your body paragraphs in your literature review, you have a sentence as the result, and the other sentence and then a sentence there with the results, and then another sentence with the analysis. Or maybe it makes more sense to present 2 to 3 sentences presenting all of the results, and then maybe 2 sentences, for example, that analyze that evidence or those results. Okay, so that is how I would approach a body paragraph, thinking in terms of result discussion, both of those within the same paragraph. Now, there's another option. There's another way that you present the discussion section, and this is divided into separate body paragraphs. So, for example, let's say that you have one paragraph, again, you begin with a sentence, and you dedicate that one body paragraph, you dedicate that to presenting only your findings. Okay, so you're going to have only findings, only data information that comes from all these sources, very data sources. You're going to include a link sentence or sizing sentence. I think I mentioned the prior example that I just mentioned, where you include both evidence and analysis. And of course, you're going to analyze that sentence, including summarizing sentence or link sentence. Okay, I think I forgot to mention that. So in the second example, you're presenting only result, the main idea of the sentences, and then you're going to include your link sentence. In the following paragraph, you're going to begin again with topic sentence. or main item. And then the rest of the supporting sentences are going to your analysis or video discussion. What are you discussing the evidence from prior paragraph. All right. Once you have completed this paragraph, then you will complete by creating a link to the sentence. So this is really the approach. You got basically different ways that you can break down those discussions. Just make sure, number one, that the evidence precedes the analysis. Results become the discussion. And at the end of the day, right, you should have a good balance between evidence and discussion. You want to have too much evidence or heavy results and not enough discussion, and vice versa. We want to balance, and regardless if you decide to include ethics of your findings in one paragraph in the analysis, or whether you divide it up, you need to have balance between those two ethics. So that's what we consider. And two things here that I'm addressing. The first being that you find the most appropriate organizational pattern as that. And I gave some examples here. There are plenty of other examples. And the second, after you make that decision about how to answer, because you really need to make that decision first before you think about how you're going to divide up results and discussion. Once you've made that decision, then you're ready to begin writing. And then as you each paragraph, you need to decide, okay, now this topic sentence, what do I need? Do I need to divide up evidence and analyze? Do I need to divide up the results discussion in separate paragraphs? Or should I include it in the same paragraph? What's going to be the easiest for someone else to understand? What's the easiest way for me to explain this? And ask yourself that question for each body paragraph that you include in each of your body paragraphs. Okay, think about that for each topic sentence, each main idea for each paragraph. The final thing I'll say is that it is not necessary to include an introduction in your results discussion segment. I would just right away jump into answering your questions, get to the point, the first body paragraph, the first sentence, and get right to it. Right below your level 1 heading that's going to be entitled Results and Discussion, you're going to have your first level 2 heading, your first subset. And below your first subsection is we're going to include your body paragraph. And you should have 2 to 4 subsections, 2 to 4 level 2 headings that divide your ideas, divide up your answer, essentially your long answer to your research questions, and go from there. So I think I'll stop there. I hope this helps. Again, if you have questions in your books, I usually get a notification and I respond promptly